The sound of the Huey helicopter was unlike anything else in Vietnam. That deep hope, hope, hope echo cut through the humid jungle air. A heartbeat of war that could be heard miles away. For the men on the ground, it meant hope, reinforcements, or rescue. But for those who rode inside, especially the ones standing in the open doors with machine guns in their hands, it often meant something else. It meant gambling with death. They were called door gunners. Young men, often barely 20 years old, who volunteered, or were voluntold, to sit in the most dangerous seat of the most iconic helicopter of the Vietnam War, the UH-1 Huey. Their job was simple on paper: defend the chopper, suppress enemy fire, and protect their brothers. But in Vietnam, nothing was simple. Every mission for a door gunner was a coin toss. You could take off alive and never return. The Huey wasn't a fortress. It was a flying tin can, light, loud, and exposed from every angle. And when that side door slid open mid-flight, the gunner became the most visible, most vulnerable target in the sky. No armor, no cover, just a thin doorframe between him and hundreds of bullets flying in from the jungle below. Many of these door gunners came from regular infantry backgrounds. Some had never even fired a machine gun before their first mission. The M60 they manned was powerful, spitting out up to 550 rounds per minute, but it also jammed easily and overheated fast. Gunners learned to feather the trigger, firing in controlled bursts, trying to balance destruction with survival. But when the ambush came, all that training went out the window. They'd just hold the trigger down, screaming through the noise, praying the barrel didn't melt before the chopper went down. The enemy, the Viet Cong, learned quickly. They knew the Huey was both a lifeline and a target. So they set up kill zones, drawing helicopters into traps. Door gunners often found themselves pouring fire into thick jungle, unable to see who or what they were shooting at. The jungle swallowed everything: sound, vision, even the echo of gunfire. 1 second it was calm. The next, imagine this: you're standing on that open platform, wind ripping at your face, your helmet vibrating from the engine roar. Below, flashes of muzzle fire explode from the trees. You lean out, firing your M60 at shadows, tracer rounds slicing through the green. You can't hear your own voice. You can't even hear the man beside you. Then snap! A bullet punches through the floor, another through the side panel. The Huey jerks, shudders, starts to tilt. The pilot yells, trying to regain control, and you keep firing. Because stopping means death. For you and everyone on board. That was the life of a door gunner. A mix of adrenaline, terror, and split-second decisions. They were exposed not just during firefights, but during landings and extractions. The most dangerous moments. As Hueys came down to drop or pick up troops, they hovered low, sometimes just a few feet off the ground. That's when the Viet Cong would unleash hell. AK-47 rounds, RPGs, even machine gun nests hidden in the tree lines. The gunners were the first to return fire, and the first to die. For many soldiers, being a door gunner wasn't a duty they chose. Some were infantrymen rotated into the role after casualties. Others volunteered just for the thrill, thinking it was a cool job, until they saw what it really meant. Door gunners had one of the highest casualty rates in Vietnam. Their life expectancy during heavy combat periods was sometimes measured in weeks, not months. There was a saying among the troops: if you fly long enough, you're going to get hit. Every door gunner knew that. But still, they flew. There was something deeply human about it. The bond between pilot and gunner was almost sacred. Pilots trusted their gunners with their lives, not just to shoot accurately, but to keep them alive when the chopper was going down. Many pilots later said they could feel their gunners watching over them like guardian angels. The trust was absolute, but so was the danger. The Huey's open design made it perfect for rapid troop movement, but it was a nightmare for survival. Even when armor kits were added, they barely protected the crew's vital areas. The sides remained open. Enemy bullets could rip straight through the skin of the aircraft and hit the gunner before he even saw where it came from. The constant exposure, noise, and vibration pushed many door gunners to the edge, both physically and mentally. At night it got even worse. Missions flown in darkness were terrifying. You couldn't see the jungle. You couldn't see the enemy. You could only fire at muzzle flashes, hoping you hit something before something hit you. And in that darkness, the sense of isolation was overwhelming. Many gunners described the experience as being in a coffin in the sky. Every light, every spark felt like death reaching out. And yet, despite all this, they kept volunteering. Why? Because someone had to. Because the man next to them was counting on it. Because, in the strange psychology of war, facing death in the open sky felt better than waiting for it in the jungle. For some, being a door gunner gave a sense of control, An illusion maybe, but a powerful one. You could see your enemy. You could fight back. Unlike infantry on the ground, trapped by mines and ambushes, gunners at least had their hands on a weapon that could make a difference. They called themselves Sky Warriors. Half in jest, half in pride, they painted names on their guns. Death Dealer, Widowmaker, Baby Girl, each name told a story. Each mission left another scar, but beneath the bravado there was fear. Real, bone-deep fear. A fear that clung to them long after the rotor blades stopped spinning. Door gunners in Vietnam lived on borrowed time, and they knew it. Still, they flew again and again, because if they didn't, who would? For many door gunners, every takeoff felt like a second chance, a borrowed heartbeat between one mission and the next. The war in Vietnam didn't wait, didn't pause, didn't care who lived or died. And in that constant churn of missions, replacements, and funerals, the men behind those machine guns became both heroes and ghosts. Often at the same time. You see, the thing about flying over Vietnam wasn't just the enemy below. It was the jungle itself, vast, endless, and unforgiving. The thick canopy concealed not only the Viet Cong but their weapons, their tunnels, and their ambush positions. Door gunners were often flying so low that branches brushed the helicopter skids. In that claustrophobic airspace, even a single tracer round could find its mark. One of the cruel truths of helicopter warfare was that speed meant vulnerability. Hueys had to move fast, in drop-out, but every second in the air was another chance to be hit. For door gunners, this meant never letting their guard down. Eyes scanning, fingers on the trigger, sweat dripping under the helmet. Every vibration, every flicker of movement below could be the start of another firefight. The M60 machine gun, their lifeline, was both friend and foe. It was heavy, temperamental, and could jam at the worst possible moment. Many gunners gave their weapons nicknames, personalizing them like a companion in battle. One gunner called his Sweet Mary. Another named his the Reaper. They'd talk to them before missions, tap the metal, whispering small prayers. In a war where luck often outweighed skill, superstition was survival. Some pilots later said they could recognize a door gunner's silhouette before anything else. Standing wide, belt-fed ammo draped across their chest, eyes hidden behind dark visors, they looked fearless. But most of them weren't. Fear was constant, but it was also fuel. It kept them sharp, alert, alive. And yet, no matter how good they were, no one was untouchable. There's a story told by veterans about a young gunner named Mike. He'd flown over 50 missions without a scratch. Everyone called him Lucky. He was fast, accurate, and had nerves of steel. But one day, while providing cover during an extraction, a single round hit the hydraulic line near his position. The fluid sprayed, the chopper lost control, and within seconds it spiraled down into the trees. Mike didn't survive, neither did the pilot. Lucky, they said, ran out of luck. It's a story told again and again, different names, same ending. That's what made being a door gunner so brutal. It didn't matter how brave, skilled, or careful you were. You could do everything right and still die in seconds. The casualty numbers were staggering. Some estimates suggest that the average life expectancy of a door gunner in a hot zone was less than 2 weeks. Many didn't even last long enough to be rotated out. The constant exposure to enemy fire meant their chances were slimmer than almost any other role in Vietnam. When a Huey went down, and hundreds did, the gunners were almost always killed instantly. But even when they survived, they didn't come back the same. The sound of the helicopter, that rhythmic chopping of the rotors, haunted them. Some couldn't sleep without hearing it. Others couldn't stand the silence. The noise had become part of them, and the memories those stayed forever. Many door gunners developed what we'd now call PTSD, but back then, there wasn't a name for it. They just called it the shakes, the nightmares, the flashbacks, the guilt. It was all part of coming home. Civilians would ask what it was like up there, and most gunners would just shrug. How do you explain to someone what it feels like to watch tracers arc through the sky, to see your friend disappear in a flash, to land in blood and smoke and pretend it's normal? You can't. For many, being a door gunner wasn't about patriotism or glory. It was about survival, brotherhood, and duty. They weren't looking to be heroes, but history made them that way. The danger they faced wasn't exaggerated. It was documented, measured, and repeated. The statistics told the story, but the faces told the truth. And still, there was a strange beauty in it. The sun setting over the jungle, the way the light hit the rotor blades, the camaraderie between men who knew they might not see tomorrow. Door gunners laughed louder, cursed harder, and lived faster than anyone else. Because they had to. There were moments, fleeting ones, where the chaos almost looked peaceful, Like when a Huey would glide above the fog at dawn, the jungle below hidden in mist. The gunner would lean out, scanning the horizon, and for a brief second, the war would disappear. Just the wind, the sound of the engine, and the illusion of peace. But it never lasted long. The jungle always had a way of reminding them that death was waiting. It wasn't just enemy bullets that killed door gunners. It was fatigue, mechanical failures, bad luck, even weather. Helicopters crashed for all sorts of reasons in Vietnam: poor visibility, overheating engines, overloaded weight. When a Huey went down, it went down fast, and the gunners, strapped near the doors, often never had time to escape. Many veterans later said the hardest part wasn't dying. It was knowing they'd have to keep flying after watching others go down. The replacements came quick. New faces, new names, same fate. The cycle repeated until the end of the war. What makes their story so haunting is how invisible it became over time. Everyone remembers the soldiers in the jungle, the pilots, the medics, but the door gunners? They were the shadows between life and death, the bridge between the ground and the sky, the men who saw everything and survived almost nothing. Still, in every photo of a Huey, you'll see them, leaning out, eyes sharp, gun ready, wind tearing through their flight suits. Unseen heroes of a forgotten role. Their bravery wasn't loud. It wasn't written in medals or parades. It was written in bullet holes, burned hands, and empty seats. And though the war ended, their legend didn't. In every story told by those who flew, there's always a line, a mention, a name whispered: my door gunner. That's how you know the bond was real. Pilots trusted them like family. In many cases, they died together. The door gunners didn't survive Vietnam, not because they were weak, but because they were the first line of defense and the last to leave. They fought the kind of war that doesn't end when the shooting stops, the kind that follows you home and never lets you forget. As the war dragged on, the life of a door gunner became a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and tragedy all at once. By 1970, tens of thousands of helicopter missions had been flown across Vietnam. The Huey had become the soundtrack of the entire conflict. Every troop insertion, every medevac, every firefight in the jungle began and ended with that thundering rotor beat. And wherever a Huey went, the door gunner was there, standing between the crew and death. But the truth behind that legend was darker than most could imagine. Helicopter warfare in Vietnam was experimental. The U.S. Army had never used air mobility on such a massive scale before. Pilots and crews were learning as they went, adapting, improvising, and often paying with their lives. There were no manuals for surviving as a door gunner. No proven tactics, no reliable armor. Just instincts, experience, and luck. Many gunners described their first missions as chaos. They'd step into the helicopter, smell the oil and gunpowder, feel the metal tremble under them, and realize they were part of something no training could prepare them for. Within minutes of liftoff, the jungle below would erupt in muzzle flashes, and suddenly, theory turned to survival. When you think about why door gunners didn't survive Vietnam, it wasn't because they weren't brave enough. It was because their role demanded exposure. Their position was literally designed to absorb danger, to draw fire away from the pilots, to protect the men inside, to keep the chopper alive long enough to deliver or extract troops. They were the shield of the sky, and shields break before swords do. Even their equipment betrayed them. Early in the war, most Hueys lacked proper door mounts for their M60s. Gunners had to improvise, using bungee cords, rope, or even their own strength to stabilize the gun during flight. The recoil would shake their arms numb. The vibrations made their teeth rattle. They'd fire until their fingers blistered, reload and fire again, and yet, somehow, they made it look effortless. To outsiders, door gunners looked invincible, standing tall in open doors, firing at unseen enemies. But inside, most of them were running on adrenaline, fear, and exhaustion. Missions could run 10, 12 hours a day. There were no breaks, no safe zones. When the chopper landed, they'd refuel, rearm, and go again. Sleep was rare. Food came cold, if at all. And the jungle heat, a constant, suffocating weight, never let up. But what truly separated door gunners from others was the psychological toll. Imagine staring down into the green maze of Vietnam every day, knowing someone down there wanted you dead. You couldn't see them, but they could see you. You'd fire at movement, at muzzle flashes, at the unknown, and then go home wondering if you hit anything at all. That uncertainty ate away at many gunners. They were fighting ghosts, and those ghosts followed them home. Many veterans later said that being a door gunner was like living in slow motion. Every mission felt longer, every noise sharper. The moment a bullet hit the metal skin of the chopper, it would echo like thunder. The smell of burnt oil and cordite filled the cabin. The gunner's world became a blur of smoke, light, and noise. a spinning storm that could end at any second. There's one story told by a veteran named Ed Doc Peters, who flew as a medic on countless Huey missions. He said, "You could always tell a door gunner by his eyes. Even after one flight, they looked older, like they'd already seen the end." That's the hidden truth. Most of them did see the end. Over and over again. They watched friends burn, helicopters fall, and skies turn red, and still, they climbed back in. By the end of the war, thousands of door gunners had been killed or wounded. Many never even made it into official records because they weren't assigned permanently to one crew. They floated between missions, between units, ghosts in the system. Their names, in many cases, vanished into paperwork and memory. But among those who survived, there was pride. Deep, unshakable pride. They knew what they had done. They knew what it meant to be the one holding the line between life and death. For every platoon rescued, every medevac completed, every pilot brought home, a door gunner had risked everything, and when the war ended, their legacy lived on. Not in parades, not in speeches, but in stories whispered by those who remembered. There's an old saying among Vietnam veterans, "God is my co-pilot, but my door gunner is my guardian angel." Those words came from real experience. In the chaos of battle, pilots would often lose control, wounded, blinded by smoke or shrapnel. The door gunners, bleeding, terrified but determined, would reach across and steady the controls even as the chopper went down. Some died doing it. Others managed to save their crews before the explosion. That kind of courage doesn't fade with time. When people today watch old footage of Hueys flying over the jungle, they often focus on the pilots, the infantry, the explosions. But if you look closer, at the edges of the frame, you'll see them, the door gunners, firing into the green, bracing against the wind, eyes locked forward. Those faces are what held the war together. They didn't survive Vietnam because their job wasn't meant for survival. It was meant for others to live. Every bullet they caught, every mission they flew, every time they leaned out over that jungle, it was for the men on the ground, for the pilots, for their brothers. That's what makes their story both heartbreaking and unforgettable. Today, when veterans gather and talk about those days, there's always a pause when someone mentions the door gunners. A silence filled with respect, because everyone knew they had the hardest seat in the war, and maybe that's why their legacy matters even more now. They remind us that heroism isn't always about glory. Sometimes it's about standing in an open door, holding a machine gun, and refusing to look away, no matter what's coming. For those who survived, life after Vietnam was a different kind of battle. They returned to a country divided, to a world that didn't understand what they'd seen. Some never spoke about it. Some drank to forget. Some spent decades trying to find peace in the noise that had once defined them. But even in silence, their story endured. In the echoes of rotor blades, in the smell of gun oil, in the memories that refused to fade. They were the warriors of the wind, the last thing soldiers on the ground heard before being lifted to safety. The first thing enemies aimed for, and though so many didn't make it back, their courage did. It lives on in every veteran who tells their story, in every museum where a Huey stands silent but proud, and in every heart that remembers what they gave up, so others could live. The war in Vietnam may have ended, but the legend of the door gunners never will. They were young, they were brave, they were doomed, and they knew it every time they took off. But still they flew, because that's what heroes do.